True confidence does not come from proving yourself to others, nor from chasing perfection. It emerges quietly, like a river flowing from within, when you accept yourself fully, your strengths, your flaws, and all the moments in between. In this speech, inspired by Alan Watts, we explore how self-acceptance is the secret to genuine confidence that cannot be shaken. True confidence is often misunderstood. Many think it comes from accomplishments, recognition, or the admiration of others. But these are temporary. They rise and fall like waves on the ocean. Real confidence, the kind that does not tremble in the face of judgment, begins quietly within the heart, and it begins with one simple yet profound act: acceptance. Acceptance of yourself, not as an idealized version shaped by society, but as the real, imperfect, living, breathing being that you are. When you accept yourself, you stop fighting against your own nature. You stop resisting the very traits, habits, and quirks that make you unique. Most of us spend our lives trying to mold ourselves into someone we believe others will approve of. We polish, perform, and pretend. Yet this constant struggle creates insecurity, because you are basing your worth on illusions and the opinions of others. Confidence built on such shifting ground is fragile. It crumbles at the slightest criticism or failure. Acceptance, on the other hand, builds a foundation that is unshakable. It tells you that your value is inherent, not conditional. Acceptance does not mean complacency. It does not suggest you ignore growth or pretend flaws don't exist. It simply means you acknowledge where you are without shame, judgment, or denial. You see your strengths clearly and honor them, and you see your weaknesses without fear, understanding that they are not your enemies. They are guides pointing the way toward learning and depth. A person who accepts themselves does not need constant external validation because their internal compass is steady. Confidence emerges naturally as a byproduct of this deep inner harmony. Think of confidence as a quiet river. It does not roar or force its way, but it flows steadily, carving its path through rocks and valleys with persistence and grace. When you accept yourself, you allow that river to move freely. You stop damming it with fear, self-criticism, and comparison. You stop letting the opinions of others dictate your course. You begin to act from a place of authenticity rather than approval-seeking, and it is in this authenticity that the magnetic quality of confidence arises. People sense it, not because you boast, but because you exist fully, unapologetically, and with peace. Take a moment to reflect. How often do you try to be someone else? How often do you fight your own nature, pretending it is wrong and seeking acceptance from the outside world? What would happen if, for once, you simply allowed yourself to be as you are, without masks, without apologies, without judgment? This is the starting point of true confidence. Comment below and share your thoughts. What is one part of yourself you've struggled to accept? And how could embracing it change the way you show up in the world? We live in a world that constantly measures us against someone else. Social media likes, job titles, academic degrees, and material possessions have become the yardsticks of our self-worth. From the moment we wake up to the moment we sleep, there is a subtle, almost invisible pressure to be enough in the eyes of others. Yet this ceaseless pursuit of approval is a slow poison to confidence. When your sense of value depends on the judgment of others, you are no longer living for yourself. You are performing for a world that is too busy with its own performance to notice yours. Letting go of external validation does not mean rejecting the world or being indifferent to feedback. Rather, it is the act of anchoring your sense of worth internally, so that approval or disapproval becomes merely information, not the foundation of your existence. Think of it as standing on a solid rock in the middle of a river, while the current flows relentlessly around you. The water may push, swirl, and crash, but the rock remains firm. That rock is your own acceptance, your own understanding of your value, independent of applause or criticism. When we seek constant validation, we fragment ourselves. We adjust our behavior, tone of voice, even our deepest desires to fit what we think others expect. Over time, this creates a disconnect between who we are and who we pretend to be. We may gain praise, awards, or temporary admiration, but we lose something infinitely more valuable: Authenticity. Confidence rooted in authenticity cannot be taken away because it is not borrowed. It is cultivated from within. Letting go of external validation also frees us from comparison. The mind, when constantly measuring itself against others, is never satisfied. There is always someone richer, smarter, or more talented. There is always a more successful, more beautiful, or more popular version of life that we are chasing. But if you anchor your worth internally, comparisons lose their grip. You no longer need to prove yourself or compete to feel whole. You move through life with a quiet composure, guided by your own compass, not by the fluctuating opinions of a distracted world. This is a practice, not an event. At first, you will notice the tug of old habits, the urge to seek likes, approval, and recognition. Yet each time you observe this impulse without surrendering to it, you strengthen your inner ground. Confidence grows quietly but persistently, like roots spreading deep beneath a tree. The leaves may tremble in the wind, but the roots remain steadfast. Take a moment to reflect. What are the areas in your life where you are seeking approval unnecessarily? How would your actions, your relationships, or your creativity change if you no longer needed anyone else's affirmation to feel worthy? Comment below and share your experience. What is one step you can take today to release the need for external validation? Your insight may inspire someone else to take the first step toward true, unwavering confidence. Many of us wander through life as though perfection is not just desirable but necessary. We polish our words, sculpt our bodies, edit our thoughts, and carefully curate the image we present to the world. We act as though a flawless exterior, a flawless resume, or a flawless reputation will finally grant us peace, respect, or love. Yet in truth, perfection is a mirage, beautiful to behold from afar but impossible to touch. Real confidence is not born from flawlessness. It is born from the intimate acceptance of your own imperfections. Embracing your imperfections is not resignation. It is not saying, "I am broken, so I give up." Rather, it is an acknowledgement of the totality of who you are. It is recognizing that your quirks, your mistakes, your vulnerabilities, and even your fears are not obstacles to your self-worth. They are part of the fabric of your being. Every crack in the vase, every scar, every misstep carries its own story, its own rhythm, and its own beauty. When you allow yourself to be human, fully and unapologetically, a deep, unshakable confidence begins to emerge. Consider how often we hide the very parts of ourselves that could bring depth, authenticity, and connection. We may edit our feelings, mask our doubts, or suppress our eccentricities out of fear of judgment. But these same elements, if embraced, can become your greatest strengths. Vulnerability opens the door to genuine relationships. Mistakes become lessons that shape wisdom. Quirks create uniqueness that no one else can replicate. Confidence that depends on pretending to be perfect is brittle. It cracks under scrutiny. Confidence rooted in embracing your imperfections is flexible, resilient, and magnetic. This practice also liberates you from comparison. When you stop measuring yourself against idealized versions of others or against your own imagined standards, you free yourself to fully inhabit your life. You no longer compete to be more perfect. You simply exist as you are, fully present. The world responds to authenticity with resonance. There is a quiet, compelling power in someone who is unapologetically themselves. Begin by observing without judgment. Notice your tendencies, your fears, and your quirks. Acknowledge them, and allow yourself to see them not as flaws, but as markers of your humanity. When you stumble, instead of criticizing yourself, lean into the lesson. When you feel awkward or uncertain, smile at it and let it be. This is not weakness, it is courage. It is the courage to exist as a whole person, fully, without apology. What imperfection have you been hiding from yourself or the world? How might embracing it transform the way you feel, speak, or act? Comment below and share one imperfection you are willing to accept today. Your honesty might just inspire someone else to embrace their own humanity and step into true confidence. From the moment we begin to understand the world, we are taught to seek approval. First, it is our parents' smiles, then the teacher's nod, then the applause of peers. Approval becomes a currency we chase, a fragile measure of our worth. And yet life itself is not measured by approval. It is lived in moments that cannot be judged or graded. The problem is that when we depend on others' approval, our confidence is no longer ours. It is borrowed, unstable, and conditional. True self-assurance emerges only when we stop asking for permission to exist. Imagine a bird that hesitates to sing until every other bird approves its song, or a stream that waits for validation before it flows. Absurd, isn't it? And yet, so many of us live in a similar state, holding back our thoughts, desires, and actions until we feel it is acceptable. Every time we measure our worth by someone else's perception, we give away our freedom. We replace authenticity with performance. And over time, the life we are living becomes someone else's story, not our own. Letting go of approval is not rebellion or defiance. It is not cutting yourself off from connection or care. It is instead the profound recognition that your existence does not need justification. When you stop performing to be liked, you begin to act with clarity, creativity, and courage. You begin to make decisions not based on the of rejection, but on the resonance of your own inner voice. This is where true confidence resides, not in the applause, not in the accolades, but in the quiet certainty that you are enough simply because you are. Notice how much energy is wasted in the constant negotiation for others' validation. Every word you alter, every choice you bend, every feeling you suppress is a small drain on your spirit. Yet, when you release the need for approval, a remarkable transformation occurs. You act freely, think deeply, and speak honestly. People will notice, but the beauty is that their approval is no longer necessary. You have stepped into a space of unshakable self-trust, where your value is intrinsic, not conditional. Begin this practice by observing moments when you seek approval. Ask yourself, am I doing this because I want to, or because I want someone else to approve? Share in the comments one area of your life where you are ready to let go of approval. By naming it, you take the first step toward reclaiming your confidence and living authentically. True liberation and true confidence emerges the moment we stop asking for validation. It is a quiet rebellion, not loud or dramatic, but deeply powerful. To live fully, to love freely, to create without fear, we must let go of the need to be seen as right by anyone but ourselves. And in that surrender, we find freedom. In the quiet corners of our minds, many of us carry an illusion, the belief that we must be flawless to be worthy. We scrutinize our thoughts, our actions, even our emotions, as if every mistake diminishes our value. And yet, life is not a mirror reflecting perfection. It is a flowing river, unpredictable and beautiful in its imperfections. Alan Watts often reminded us that the struggle for perfection is itself the source of much suffering. To embrace your imperfections is not to give up. It is to align with the natural rhythm of existence, where flaws are not failures, but essential notes in the music of life. When we attempt to hide or erase our imperfections, we create a tension inside ourselves. This tension manifests as self-doubt, anxiety, and the constant need for validation. Every moment spent hiding a flaw is a moment lost to fear. True confidence, however, does not arise from hiding or pretending. It emerges when we meet our imperfections with understanding, and even with a certain warmth. When you see a scar, a mistake, or a vulnerability, and you allow yourself to acknowledge it without judgment, you experience liberation. There is a strange power in vulnerability. It is magnetic, authentic, and profoundly human. People are drawn to those who are comfortable in their own skin, who embrace their quirks and idiosyncrasies because it signals a deep sense of self-acceptance. Consider the analogy of a river flowing around rocks. The rocks might disrupt the surface, but they also give the river character and direction. Similarly, our flaws and mistakes shape our lives. They guide us, teach us, and give depth to our experiences. Instead of resisting them, we can learn to navigate them with grace. Imperfections allow us to connect more deeply with others, as they remind us that we are all human, all striving, all beautifully unfinished. In relationships, in work, in art, and in personal growth, Embracing imperfection cultivates authenticity. It allows us to take risks, speak truthfully, and act boldly without fear of judgment. To practice embracing your imperfections, begin with small, intentional steps. Notice one thing about yourself that you have long criticized. Observe it, name it, and remind yourself that it does not diminish your value. Comment below on one imperfection you are learning to embrace. By sharing this reflection, you not only release yourself from shame, but also inspire others to do the same. Ultimately, embracing imperfections is a pathway to self-compassion and real confidence. Life does not demand that we be perfect. It asks only that we be present, authentic, and courageous. Every flaw we acknowledge becomes a doorway to freedom, a reminder that our worth is inherent, not contingent on the approval of others. When you embrace your imperfections fully, you step into a space of profound confidence, resilience, and peace. So much of human life is spent chassis, approval. From childhood, we are conditioned to seek validation, grades, compliments, social recognition. We begin to measure our worth not by our own understanding of ourselves, but by the reflections we see in others' eyes. And yet, this pursuit is an endless maze, for no one can truly satisfy the hunger for approval except ourselves. Alan Watts often reminded us that dependence on external validation is a subtle form of bondage. We trade our freedom for a fleeting sense of acceptance, and in doing so, we obscure the profound truth that confidence arises from within, not from applause or recognition. When we live for the approval of others, we are perpetually at the mercy of forces beyond our control. A word, a glance, a judgment can shake our sense of self. We may smile on the surface, but beneath there is tension, a quiet anxiety that whispers, "Am I enough?" The irony is that the very people whose approval we crave often have no real understanding of who we are. They see only a fragment, a version filtered through our social masks. True liberation comes when we release this dependence. When you stop asking the world for permission to exist, you discover the vast inner landscape of your own mind, the innate confidence that has been there all along. Letting go of external validation does not mean rejecting kindness, feedback, or relationships. Rather, it is about grounding your sense of self in something stable, your own awareness, your own values, and your own expiry. NCE of life. It is about recognizing that the approval of others is transient, but the relationship you have with yourself is permanent. When you validate yourself, when you recognize your own efforts, your own growth, your own worth, you step into a space of unshakable confidence. There is a quiet power in this, a freedom to act, to speak, and to love without the constant need for reassurance. Begin by observing one area in your life where you rely too heavily on external approval. Perhaps it is in your work, your friendships, or even your social media presence. Ask yourself, am I doing this to honor myself or to gain someone else's approval? Reflect on this in the comments below. Sharing your insights not only deepens your awareness, but invites others to question the same patterns in their own lives. Ultimately, letting go of external validation is not a rejection of the world, but an embrace of yourself. It is the understanding that the measure of your worth is intrinsic, independent of the fluctuating judgments of others. As Watts might say, life flows most harmoniously when we stop bending to the ephemeral expectations of others and start listening to the quiet, enduring voice within. True confidence is born not from applause, but from acceptance. One of the deepest sources of anxiety in human life comes from our resistance to the unknown. We crave certainty, patterns, predictability. We want the path laid out clearly before us, the steps marked, the outcomes assured. And yet life, in its infinite complexity, rarely obliges. The unknown is not a threat, it is the very texture of existence. Alan Watts often pointed out that the attempt to control life, to pin down its uncertainties, is akin to trying to grasp water in your hand. The tighter you hold, the more it slips away. True confidence, therefore, is inseparable from the ability to embrace uncertainty. When we cling too tightly to expectations, we suffocate the natural flow of life. We resist change, we fear failure, and we try to armor ourselves against the unpredictable currents of existence. But paradoxically, it is precisely in surrendering to the unknown, that we find freedom. The unknown is where creativity lives, where growth occurs, and where the most profound experiences of life unfold. Each day is an uncharted territory, and those who approach it with curiosity rather than fear are those who discover the richness of being alive. Embracing the unknown does not mean recklessness. It does not mean abandoning responsibility or ignoring consequences. It means cultivating a mindset where uncertainty is not a source of terror, but an invitation to engage more deeply with life. It means recognizing that our sense of control is always limited, and yet within that limitation lies opportunity. When you stop resisting the unfolding of life and start flowing with it, confidence emerges naturally, not as a loud declaration, but as a quiet steadiness that can face any situation with equanimity. Consider your own life. How often have you avoided a choice, a challenge, or a change because the outcome was uncertain? Reflect on how that avoidance has shaped your path. In the comments below, share one area where you can lean into the unknown instead of shying away from it. By articulating it, you give yourself a first step toward embracing the uncertainty that life offers. Alan Watts reminds us that the universe is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be experienced. Life is a dance, and its rhythm is often unpredictable. To embrace the unknown is to join the dance fully, without clinging to the music you think should play or the step you believe you must take. It is in this surrender, this willingness to be present with whatever arises, that true confidence is born. The unknown ceases to be something to fear. It becomes the medium through which you discover your own courage, resilience, and vitality. So take a deep breath and let the unknown be your teacher, your companion, and your guide. Share your thoughts in the comments. How can you lean into life's uncertainties today? Your reflections may inspire someone else to step into the unknown as well, cultivating confidence through acceptance and presence. The final, perhaps most liberating, step toward true confidence is learning to trust yourself. Not in a boastful sense, not as if you hold some absolute power over the world, but in the quiet, unshakable recognition that you are part of life itself. Watts often reminded us that we are not separate observers of existence, but integral expressions of it. The river of life flows through us, and resisting it only creates tension, doubt, and unease. To trust yourself is to allow that river to move freely, to move with it rather than against it. Trust is the antidote to fear. Fear arises when we feel disconnected from our own intuition, when we believe that life is happening to us rather than through us. But the moment you acknowledge your own capacity to respond, adapt, and navigate the currents of life, a remarkable shift occurs. You stop second-guessing, overanalyzing, and grasping desperately for all. You begin to recognize that even in moments of uncertainty, even in apparent setbacks, you have the inner resources to meet what comes with clarity and calm. Trusting yourself does not mean that you will never stumble or fail. Alan Watts spoke of life as an improvisational dance. Missteps are part of the rhythm. What matters is that you remain present, attentive, and willing to continue moving, even when the music changes unexpectedly. Confidence is not built through perfection or avoidance of mistakes. It is forged in the awareness that you can meet life as it is, without needing it to conform to your expectations. One of the most powerful practices in cultivating this trust is self-reflection. Take the time to listen to your own mind and heart. Notice the instincts and desires that rise naturally, and differentiate them from external pressures or societal expectations. When you act from a place of inner alignment rather than obligation, your choices carry a weight and authenticity that cannot be manufactured. Trust yourself enough to follow those impulses with courage, to allow your actions to emerge organically rather than forced or calculated. Life is inherently uncertain, and trying to master it entirely is a futile endeavor. But when you trust yourself and the flow of existence, you enter a state of harmony with the world, one in which confidence arises effortlessly. It is not a loud, brash confidence, but a quiet, resilient presence that can weather any storm and embrace any opportunity. By cultivating this trust, you allow yourself to fully participate in life's unfolding rather than remaining on the sidelines, fearful or hesitant. So pause for a moment and ask yourself, where in your life can you trust yourself more fully today? What decisions, actions, or feelings have you been hesitant to honor? Share your thoughts in the comments below. By articulating your intentions and your trust in yourself, you create a ripple effect, not only strengthening your own confidence, but inspiring others to do the same. Remember, the flow of life is not something to control, it is something to trust, to dance with, and to allow to carry you toward your fullest potential. Trust yourself, and life will reveal the path that is uniquely yours.